the meeting, and we now have in the chair Bruce, and we've got the report there, and this is the work program, so open it for discussion.
Good morning, Community Board. So you're happy to take any questions on the work program. I probably gave you a little spiel last time that we're constantly tweaking and refining this report, trying to get it a bit better and better. We've added some extra columns, which I think I talked about last meeting. And so I'm working with my direct reports and working with their teams to make sure that they are doing as good a job as they can on comments, expected completion dates, those kind of things, the RAG status, the red, amber, green. So it's a work in progress, but we're moving forwards. So yeah, happy to take any questions.
My first one's just an administration query. Last year we received the CapEx and the OpEx.
Yes.
Are we receiving that again this year?
So we can do. So the way we've done that, because one or two other boards have also done that, and so that's something we can look at doing. We'll just work with Eileen and pop that on the bottom of the program. Yep, so we can do that. That's fine.
I think most of the board would prefer that.
Yep, that have that in place to keep it together. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, any questions on any items there? See, they're all green, which is good.
Yeah, I just was interested, the pontoon falls under the harbour renewals.
Yes.
And there's some work to be planned to be done on that. It's just cosmetic work or just renewals? Small upgrade?
On the what, sorry? On the pontoon?
On the pontoon.
I don't have those details, so there were some emails going around. If those emails out to the boards, did that answer the question you had or not?
I had one that I asked about what they were going to do. They came back and said they were talking about putting some hand ties around the edge and some anchors on the bottom. Is that right?
I can't really see.
Yeah. But I was just interested if it falls under the harbour renewals. It was, is it just part of what?
Yeah, it's just that's the activity that would sit under any kind of pontoon or anything like that would be under the harbour activity.
So the $193,000 that's been forecast in 1993,
yes,
it's not all that, as you said, the structural piers on the wharf, but the wharf structure's been done, hasn't it?
It has been done, but there's a few other bits and pieces there which, where there's, I think it's a note there about that pontoon and about the work that we're looking to do next year.
It's in the next financial year, though, isn't it?
No, for May, June, so finish off, just in the comment there, we've got the
2021.
Yeah, so May, June next year, so just at the end of the financial year.
Right.
So get well outside the peak period and then get that stuff done that still remains to be done. So
okay, so if the top needs replenishing, will that be part of it?
I'd say that side of it would be like on top of the pontoon or top
of the pontoon where the kids are.
Yeah, I'd say
that's a skid type thing.
Yeah, I would say that would be included in there. And what I can do is I'll follow up with the project team.
Okay,
thank you. Just confirm if that's included.
Yeah.
Bruce, the CCTV camera talking about to be completed by early November, or we're in early November now. So
yes.
Just what's the latest on that?
So the latest on that is it's pretty much as per that comment. We worked hard with Vodafone, trying to get that sorted with Vodafone. We had a mayoral intervention where Sandra managed to get a name, so we spoke to that person, and then you trickle down through the organisation, and it was very hard. So in the end, we couldn't make it work with Vodafone, so they've managed to revert back to what they were doing. So Andrew Bowden, project delivery manager, has informed me that yep, this is the status that will go in and it'll be done.
Well, I'm not too sure if you're aware, Bruce. We did have a meeting with Andrew,
yes,
and we did understand the issue over Vodafone not doing it.
Yeah.
So as a option replacement, they are now going to put a internet connection at the transfer station.
Yes. Yeah.
And put that underground to the police station.
Yeah.
And the $10,000 he was getting outside the budget from roading.
Yeah.
Okay. So we were expecting that to be completed by now, but we haven't had anything from Justin or from Andrew around that when that's operational.
Yeah.
So it would be good to know that.
Well, I can follow up. I don't have that level of detail, obviously, from Andrew. So all I got from Andrew was that we'd finally kind of managed to put a plan together that will work, because the Vodafone plan won't work, and that it'll be done this month. So I'll follow up with him and just confirm and make sure that what we do is we let the board know that it's actually done and operational, so that you guys know. Yeah. You can move on knowing that it's actually operational.
Right.
It'd be brilliant if it's in place before the summer period.
Yeah, well, it definitely should be. I mean, that's the feedback from Andrew most recently is that, yeah, it'll be this month.
And then the other one I was going to raise, obviously, the drinking water standards, but this year was a big year planned, but I see you've started work on the upgrade.
Yes, they have, yeah.
It's just filters, you say?
Yeah, so from memory, because it's bore water in Whangamata, it's mostly filtration and chlorination. Some of the bore water, like out at Wentworth Valley, requires a little bit more treatment. So you'll be aware that we've always had treatment out in the Wentworth Valley system to deal with dissolved iron. So we will need something similar, but for Beverly Hills, it will just be filtration and chlorination.
So where's the telemetry going in? Where's that been put?
So telemetry will be there as well. So we've got telemetry there already. So as part of this work, we'll have to do upgrades to SCADA and telemetry. So.
Are we able to have an update in relation to the Dennis Tegg blog about Whangamata Water's failed standards?
I'm not sure if I'm familiar with that blog, but
Yeah.
if I understand correctly, jumping to what I think he's talking about, is that every year they do like they call it an annual survey, the DHB, and so they collect all the data. We have to send them data every year. And so all around the country, they produce like a document which says this is the annual survey of all the water supplies in New Zealand, so council supplies as well as schools, barais and little community services, and then they'll show which ones are compliant with the current drinking water standards and which ones aren't. So actually a lot of pretty much all of our suppliers are not currently compliant.
Right.
That's why we're doing these drinking water standards upgrades. So, and it does get quite tricky because there's quite a lot of detail. So we do a lot of testing. So we do all the testing that we have to do. So we test in the network, we test from what comes from each of the water treatment plants to check that it's still meeting the standards. So we test for E. coli to make sure there's no E. coli in the water. We do other tests around the network for free available chlorine to make sure that we've still got chlorine in the water, which is obviously an indicator that it's still safe. So all that stuff, we have to pass all those. If we don't pass any of those, like the E. coli, for example, we have to notify the DHB, and then we have to take subsequent samples. You have to get 3 days clear samples to make sure that it was a erroneous sample and, just dirt on lid or something. So we don't have any issues around that. The issue is around the new standards are a risk-based approach, and they say to be able to do that, you need to have this kind of infrastructure in place. So that's what we're installing.
And so
it's not like we're getting tests that are failing and going, look, the water's not safe.
So his blog was that we failed the standards which you were talking about, and that we failed the Health Act as well.
Yeah, so under the Health Act, the Drinking Water Standards falls in under that Health Act, 1956, I think it is, or something like that. Everything falls out of that and says this is what you must do, and this is what you must meet. Here are the standards. And so we're working our way towards meeting those by doing all those upgrades and those infrastructure upgrades at the treatment plants. So there's no way we can comply with those standards without having the infrastructure in place.
Sure.
So yeah, so it's
it's not a quality thing.
It's not a quality thing as in like we're failing what we're testing at the moment. It's more around we can't hit that standard because we don't have the technology in place to do it.
Sure.
We did put something in the council's workshop about 2 weeks ago, but I can resend the statement and it exactly encompasses everything that Bruce has said about meeting those standards and why we don't, and the reasons about that report, so I can file that through again.
Okay.
But we're working hard, we're spending a lot of ratepayers' money to move us forward, so as an organisation we're doing the right thing. But it is incredibly complex, and it's I understand it totally that it's very hard. It's hard enough if you're involved in the industry, let alone for people outside looking and going, well, what's going on? Like, why am I getting this thing saying that it's not compliant? So, yeah.
So with the concerns, through the chair, with the concerns that there's going to be very poor rain between now and April.
Yes.
Besides the fact of getting people to try and conserve water, what's the situation? What else can we do about that?
So there's not much else we can do apart from make sure we're managing the water as well as we can, minimising any wastage, making sure that our operations are minimising wastage, and that we're working with people to try and encourage and help them around water conservation. We have had information going out for a number of weeks from Lorna and her team around water tanks, and if anyone wants to, we're encouraging people if they want to get a tank, ahead of Christmas and get it filled up while there is some rain, to help them kind of with garden water and boat washing, that kind of stuff, to do that. But we are hearing that, and some tank suppliers have got like a 3-month delay because everyone around the country is, or at least in the North Island, is kind of doing the same thing. The stuff around Auckland and their water, water situation is obviously in the media quite a bit, so it's quite front of mind for everyone. So yeah,
I ordered one yesterday at 3,200 litre, and it's 12 to 14 weeks is the normal downtime.
I had heard that, so it's good to hear that.
But as that water supply goes down, is the standard going to lower again?
No, so the standard remains the same. So it's just around getting enough volume. So what happens is that we've got roughly I think 7 well fields across Whangamata that we draw water from that all goes into the network via chlorination and a little bit of treatment at Wentworth Valley. And so we just have to manage those supplies. The resource consents, we've got a resource consent from Regional Council for each of those supplies. That has requirements on us around maximum cubic metres of water we can take per day. They always have standards on them around maximum conductivity reading you can get in the water, all those kind of things. So we just have to work as a water services team, work with Veolia to juggle all that stuff and try and do it as best we can.
Can I ask you a question? Have you considered the possibility of 20,000 people coming in for a few days? What's the effects going to be upon the water supply in the area?
Yeah, so through the chair, it will be intense. We've had events like that in the past, obviously, that do kind of put us under a bit of pressure. Generally, those events, they're coming in for a few days, and normally we can handle it. So we can kind of get through that kind of very sharp peak that you'll get due to an event like that, because you have all those people in town. The problem would be if all those people came in town and stayed for like a month.
But the problem is that, say, at Christmas time, which it is, with the towns packed, totally packed, and then an extra 20,000 coming in, I just see it as total chaos.
It's less than we have at Beach Shop, but some of them won't be drinking water either.
Yeah,
but we're digressing a bit from the...
I need another question about...
It's going to be relevant to the programme.
Yeah, thank you. So there was a recent press release saying that you're drawn down on the bores heavily at the moment before we got to Christmas. It came out of the communication.
Yeah, that's not in the works programme.
Yeah, talking about the water treatment.
He's talking about the water.
Yeah, water. So I'm just saying, you feel comfortable for the summer for the water programme.
Yeah.
And we're talking about water harvesting at the moment. We know there's another site out there, a reservoir. Is that on the council's plan to consider doing that side of it as well?
So through the chair, there's no plans this side of Christmas to build another reservoir.
Not this side of Christmas, no.
No. Sorry, I thought that's what you meant. Were we going to do that? As we move forwards, to meet demand in Whangamata and all our townships, we will need to look at additional storage. So it's definitely on the cards, over the next few years. Prior to this summer, I'm as comfortable as I can be at this stage. It is going to be a dry summer. We've had a couple of dry winters and a dry summer last time. It's projected at this stage, we think, to be dry. So we are going to be under the pressure, and we're just going to have to do our best to manage our way through it and try and work with our communities. Lorna and her team have been doing a fantastic job of getting a lot of information out there. So we're really trying to lead up and try and make sure that people understand the pressure that we're under. And it's not just us, obviously, it's everyone on the upper North Island who are really under pressure around the water situation.
So can I just request then, can we normally give us a copy of the for performance?
Yes. Yeah.
And if have another one of those, that'd be great for you too.
Yeah, so you're talking about after the peak period, like getting all the figures and stuff. Yeah. Yep. So we can look at doing that. There's a bit of stuff Lorna's trying to communicate with me, and she's saying that we do have quite a bit of stuff on the website as well that helps. So, but I'm happy to work with the board and elected members to provide the information that you need once we get out of that peak period, so you can see how things went, either on the website or directly. That's fine.
Just a page on the water, we've got the monthly figures of all of our water take compared to previous month and previous year for all of the areas that the council manages the water supply.
Online, is it?
It's on the website.
On the website,
So,
okay. Right.
Yeah, we can show you the break.
So the comment made that it was a heavy drawdown, was that because of what? Just the dry weather, or because the bores are
Just dry weather, a lot of people in town.
So if the bore's low at the start of the season, it's not going to recover if there's no water, is it?
So yes, I don't think it'll be, when they say heavy drawdown, they mean like a heavy draw on the supply. We are going to have, it doesn't mean that the bores have kind of plummeted. I think it's just probably in our terminology. We maybe need to relook at that. Now, the groundwater level is lower than it has been in previous years, but as I think we mentioned in a previous forum, the average age of the groundwater in Whangamata that we're drawing is 50 years, so it's water that falls in the ranges and then slowly makes its way to the sea. And most of our bores are 60 to 80 metres below ground, so that's just a little bit of information for you guys, because there are a lot of residents around that have very shallow bores, and there's kind of shell layers that are 10, max 20 metres. And so what you'll hear is you'll hear, and it'll be correct, that the groundwater level in that top layer might be way lower than it has been in previous years, because that reacts annually, as opposed to the groundwater that we're taking, which is over a much longer period. Now things are dry. Don't kind of. We are in a situation that we're going to just have to do our best to.
We're going to expect some restrictions over.
Yeah, we definitely can. We've got to work with our communities to try and do our best with that. And like I say, Lorna and her team have been doing a good job about getting information out there now. And so we're just going to have to keep working on that.
I think if you hear what Gary's saying too, plus they're saying there's a 30% increase of customers expect this year.
Yes.
So the numbers are going to swell quite, and more than just 1 or 2 nights.
Yeah, they will. We are going to be under pressure. We do know there's going to be that 30% higher number of people around. That's what we anticipate at this stage, domestic tourism coming to the peninsula. So.
And what you're saying is you can't do anything about it really, can you?
Well, we have consent limits that we
Can you discuss those with regional council?
Yeah, sometimes we can. Yeah, sometimes we can have discussions with them. So if we need to break a consent limit, which we really don't want to do because that's it's legislation, we will get in touch with the regional council to inform them of what we're doing and why we've had to do it. So obviously that's something we're really trying to avoid.
Is there any sort of talk amongst council about all these new buildings and everything having to that a recommendation, or even you must have a water tank?
So there's been some discussions around council about that. And
Because
the challenges when you look at the number of properties that are being built. So whilst we think, it's a lot of properties being built, if you look at the total number of properties across Whangamata, it's going to be a long time until you really get any benefit of that. If you look at percentage-wise, number of properties versus how many are being built each year, forcing them to put water tanks in is going to make a very little difference for a long time. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, because the sooner you start, the sooner you kind of get the benefit.
You have to start somewhere, and these houses, some of these houses have massive roofs.
Yeah, they've just been out for a water demand strategy which closed last Friday. That's the appropriate forum for that discussion, not here today.
But surely
so I'm going to stop the discussion. We've got way beyond what's in the report. So unless there's another item people want to discuss, I'll move the report. Anyone wanted to second it? Seconded by Kay. All those in favour? Aye. Yes, carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4.1 is the Whangamata Community Marae Hub. You have your report there, and just to remind you that at our previous meetings we had a workshop with the proposers and they provided material which has been given to you just to remind you what was covered there in terms of the proposal. So what the report is suggesting is that we recommend to council in principle that the 101 Lindsay be offered to the committee as a site, but it's be subject to further community consultation. So there'll be a lot more discussion to come. That's up to the council to decide whether they go with that. So open for discussion.
Yeah, a little discussion around the wording. It talks about the Whangamata Community Marae, but it's actually Whangamata Community Hub and Marae.
Okay, well, it's got that in the main heading, but in the we should say Community Marae / hub there.
It's a hub.
Yeah. Right, it's fine.
Does that need a motion to run that?
Oh, well, it hasn't been moved yet, so we'll just change the wording. So.
The total portion just be mentioned. So.
Yeah. Okay, any further discussion?
Well, I also this report is part of a long-term process that we've been through with this group, and a lot of work's been done. They've took it to council. It never got to a vote. It got asked to go back and do some work on the OPEX budget. The OPEX budget was also suggested that some support from council in terms of helping a report, $5,000 for a report to be written. Have everybody read the report?
Yep.
Yeah, right. So I was a bit We had no input into that discussion of how that report was formatted, but it was done through council, through their operator. It does have some references to the Marai maybe moving to another location, but it doesn't affect the hub. So I just want maybe if Donna's in the room to talk about the OPEX budget. Have you had a chance to look at the OPEX budget?
I'm right behind you.
You were there, one.
I know, I like to move around.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, with the OPEX budget,
Yeah, is it looking more in line with what the Chief Executive was requesting in terms of having an OPEX budget that looks like it's financially viable on a year-to-year basis considering depreciation?
yeah, so my understanding, I wasn't involved with it back at that time, is that they were looking to just make sure that it was not only viable now, but also viable into the future.
Yeah.
And so that's why they were asked to go back and do the OPEX report, do the report that included the OPEX and also included the budgets going forward into the future.
So is your opinion that the budget is in line with that?
I sort of don't really have an opinion either way, because I don't like, they are reports that have been prepared, but I can't say that, I haven't seen the information behind those reports, so
Right.
I can't confirm either way.
Okay. Now, just the Chief Executive challenged it at the time and requested to go back and get some work done, and I think they've done the legwork now.
Yep.
They've had an accountant look at it and check it out, so we're representing it as a package to go back to council for the sign-off to use that.
So when the report goes to council for their consideration, I think it would be important that staff are able to offer an opinion as to whether it is fit for purpose. Because the work's been done, so I would hope that the staff are able to say, yes, we're satisfied that there is a sustainable case or not. So anyway, that's up to the CEO to deal with, but I know a lot of work was done with the various groups to show that they were able to generate revenue to make it an ongoing sustainable enterprise. So
one of the discussions that we talked about at the time, because there was obviously some pressure around this project going forward, was to put a sunset clause into the discussion. We haven't grown into that discussion more than just talk about it. Is this the appropriate time to talk about it?
we could probably build that into recommendation 2 with a 10-year sunset clause. So it means that if the proposal hasn't advanced in that time, then it reverts back and the thing is off the table, so that it does put a finite period on it to get underway. So do you want to move that as to alter number 2?
Happy to have discussion?
Yeah, I think we need to.
I thought we had actually.
We discussed it, but it's not in the resolution, so this make with suitable 10-year sunset clause.
I suggest it be included.
Yeah,
You move that one, happy to second it.
well, you probably shouldn't, because it's going to council.
So,
Yeah, I move.
It's moved by,
we need to specify what needs to happen at the end of the 10 years. So is that building consent or breaking ground, or
Getting the project going, really. Just,
so what does that look like?
well, I don't know.
well, the property division, when they draw up the lease agreement, they have to specify what council accepts as a sunset clause.
Maybe.
I would imagine by year 9.5, if nothing's happened, it's going to be clear that it's going to revert back, or they'll probably pull the pin earlier than that. It's not going to happen. But at least gives them a maximum time of 10 years to get something underway. So if that's moved by Dave, seconded by Tamsin, probably best if Terry and Harry can vote on this one. It's a recommendation to council. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Do you want to note your abstention?
Yeah.
So now, thank you.
Oh, can I just finish with that? That is on the December the 8th. There's a delegation would like to come over. Obviously, there's quite a lot of support from the group to come to sit in the public forum. So if we could have that early on in the discussion, it would be help the group coming over.
will be coming to the public forum, that's normally public.
Well, they won't be presenting, I would imagine.
They may speak at the public forum if they.
Yeah, I don't know if they will.
Yeah, they can speak at the public forum.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they might do, yeah, okay. Yeah, right.
So if you can liaise.
They can't be part of the meeting and you can't converse with them during the meeting, they can only speak.
I didn't know whether they want to speak or just be there for them. Yeah.
But councillors can ask for clarification during the public forum.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next one, Donna again, this is the licenses policy review.
I'm happy to move.
So moved by Terry, second by Kay, may I open up for discussion?
Through the chair, I just want to say that we've reviewed the leases and licensing to occupy policy as part of our review of the LTP. So we've made a few just small changes, mostly editorial ones, just made some new definitions and also put in some new criteria to provide some more clarity about the eligibility requirements for community organisations under this policy. Just wanted to bring your attention to one of the other things that we've done is we've made this policy and the rates remission policy more in line with each other so that, because you've kind of got to read them together. So I just wanted to just point out a couple of changes to the rates remission policy, which does affect the groups applying that, under the leases and licensing policy as well. And so that is, we've just changed it slightly so that if the community groups that lease or hold a licence for council properties, on council properties, and if they're suffering a hardship, they can apply for remission of the rates that they would normally pay for that. And when they apply for that, it will come to the community boards to approve those remissions. So that's one change we've made there. The second one is, so if it's a community group and they don't rent a council building or property, they rent something else and they are suffering from extreme financial hardship, they can apply for a grant for their rates as well, but that will go to the Audit and Risk Committee for approval. So we've basically done that just to make it really, really clear for not only for the people that want to apply for it, the remissions, but also for staff to be able to administer those.
Okay, and if they are applying and going to the Audit and Risk Committee, is that considered district-wide and funded district-wide, the remission?
No, I don't think so. I think the remission would still, I'll have to check that, but I think the remission will still fall within the various boards because we have the budgets for those through there. Okay,
so we're being impacted locally and we're not making the call, is that right?
So this one, that one there is for, I mean, you haven't made the call on these in the past.
No.
Just basically what's happened in the past is there's been a whole, like the communities can apply for it, but it was there wasn't a really clear process on how to do that. And so what we've done is we've tightened up that process but made it easier so that people would actually know what what the criteria is for them to apply. So they have a set of steps that they have to go through on the application form to actually apply now, which makes it fairer across the board for people because the way that it was done before, it was kind of like first in, first served, got it. So it was just a more fairness. I mean, the one for the extreme financial hardship one, it's not only for community board areas, so that one there covers all community groups. So it may be groups that are on leases that are district leases as well. So it's not just, it's not just the rates remission policy, which this falls under, doesn't just relate to community, specific ward areas. It relates to the entire council or the entire district.
And I'm not too sure, but I meant to say that those community groups that aren't on council land becomes more of a financial decision. I think it comes to the Audit and Risk Committee because it has bigger implications than being on. Is that the kind of?
Yes, and it is a one-off, so the ones under that category, it's very, very tight criteria under that category, and it's definitely a one-off thing. And so it's not, we wouldn't envisage there would actually be a lot of community groups that would actually fit the criteria under that one. It's pretty tight.
Good question.
Thank you. So any questions? Would someone like to, it's already moved and seconded, so I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good move. So now on to 5.1, the reserve management plan. We've already considered it a workshop, and so we now have, welcome back Emma and Faith.
We have a chair. Shall we mix it up?
Oh, this sense.
Hello again, everyone. So thank you very much for your feedback in the workshop this morning, just around some of those specific changes to the document. We've, as we said, we've gone away and made those changes in response to the feedback. Thank you. I'm aware that we don't want to scroll through the whole thing because that's not the point of this meeting. But what we can do is just jump through to each track change, if that's helpful. So what we'll do is we'll just do this first, and then we'll talk through if that's
fine.
So changing the date for today, because it's a new date. We only found one erroneous
Three
bay, so let's change that. Thank you for that, for spotting that. This was in relation to the.
Make it bigger if you want.
Thank you. Oh, yep. I was pressing control on my computer and nothing was happening. So that was just changing away from discretion for events to in consultation with leasing.
And that wording we changed in other reserves if it's the same.
Yeah. So,
Funnily enough, we had put it in a couple of the other ones, it's not
so
there.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it obviously had the idea
Yeah.
and then didn't apply to that one, so thank you for spotting that. For the Hetherington Road Reserve, you indicated that events were suitable for that, so we've removed that section policy. For the Williamson Park, we have reviewed the documentation, the resource consent requirements that relates specifically to events rather than activity licenses or permits. So what we've done is strengthen the wording in this point C here. There's no distinguishing commercial or non-commercial as was raised in workshop in the resource consent, it's just events full stop.
Yeah.
So that's just saying that the conditions in the resource consent will be part of that criteria, accepting that. And the last one was just the addition of the link. So we've just put away description where it is, the map, and just that it will be continued to be maintained. Because that's all that we can really say.
And that's not part of the, that's a appendix C.
That's appendix C, correct, yeah, so that's just at the end there. So that was the changes. You also raised an issue with the Horsley SNA special areas there, and that would be triggered on application of a resource consent. So that process would capture that. So nothing in the reserve management plan.
So can you just remind me when the consultation periods are?
Yes, yep. So if we jump, so the comprehensive report is on page 147 of your paper. So if we scroll down to our indicative timing, if we're on track with, if council approves at the December meeting, we're planning for consultation to run from December through to February, which captures that summer period quite nicely, with the intention of hearings being held March, the updated report or the updated reserve management plan coming to you in your April meeting, with council adopting in May.
Could you just give us an indication of how it's going up for consultation? Is it just going to be communication through the mail or through, is any workshops or anything that involved?
So there won't be workshops through the consultation period. We have been holding a sort of a drop-in session for the other reserve management plan consultations, just so that if the public wanted to make a submission, can come and talk to staff about their specific concerns. Because of course reserve management plans, as you're aware, is quite a sort of strict criteria of what they can and can't contemplate. So having that availability of staff to be able to speak to people interested. But regarding how things are communicated to the wider community, we've got the different methods that council, the traditional methods of communicating it, so through the paper, through social media. I believe, and Amber, I'm kind of looking at you now that what we're currently doing for Mercury Bay, there's some other collateral. The fifth plan, So we've kind of got.
Not mail-outs.
No.
So with non-resident ratepayers in town, it's an ideal time to get their feedback over a period of busy time. So social media, say, TCDC sites, there's some signage or something around town or anything like that. How do we track them to it?
I mean, I can't speak to the budget.
Normally, I know Ken does a radio slot as well, so we do get him to talk about on the CFM radio and More FM. But no, we don't normally we even put up billboards for the other 5 consultations.
We have discussed at council about how to get to absentee owners, and I think it requires a consent from that person to have their email used, and we need to encourage people to say, yes, I'm happy to have my email used, and then it can just automatically go out, and that's something we encourage, and people will have it.
So I think this is one of our biggest community projects, is the reserves. It's the one that we all spend as much time on.
Yeah.
It's number one, so getting that feedback is really, really valuable.
Yeah.
And say that we've given it the best shot and let everybody have a look and see what's going on. So I'm encouraging every avenue of discussion.
Can we perhaps put in any things that go in the local papers for anyone, because about 50% of all the Thames-Coromandel people are absentee owners.
Yes.
We just need to have something out there saying, just consent to us, just how to do it, to have the consent there, so that can then open it up to so many more people.
So through the chair, we do all the ratepayer groups, we go directly to the ratepayer group because they can then go to the.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't belong to ratepayer groups.
Yeah.
Ratepayer would be good here, it's very strong, but ratepayers is not so. Yeah, so that would be good.
I mean, non-resident ratepayers, we can also target other newspapers and radio, but there's.
Well, if you tell them how to do it, then there's a chance of it happening. Just like with the special voting, if you're an absentee owner, unless you do that application, you won't get a vote at all. So just need to tell them what to do.
So we'll work closely with the communications team to make sure that we're using all avenues possible to target those plans.
Just a question regarding the hearings. Who actually does the hearings? Is it the council or the board?
So your council has a delegation to hold the hearing. Unfortunately, it's not a community board delegation, but previously, if there was a strong message from the community that they wanted to speak to a hearing, it's been held in the local location where possible. So it's not like submitters that are submitting on a Whangamata-based document need to travel to Thames for a hearing. So at the very least, there'll be an audio-visual link, but ideally we'd have councillors coming to hear submitters on site.
So you see how many submissions we get.
Exactly, yeah. So if this is a large number, it makes sense for.
You don't want everyone to have to drive over the hill.
No, so we won't be expecting submitters to do that.
And a lot of the submitters, actually, they get a letter asking whether they want to actually speak, and a lot of them don't. They're just quite happy to put their submission through, and then they don't want to speak at the hearing, so.
If you make it too difficult, they don't want to speak anyway.
No.
If you are able to make it,
Yeah,
able to have your input from here, that'd be great.
yeah.
I just raised one more, just it's actually the Otahu Point Historic Reserve, which is on page 18 of yours. We talked about iwi not, land not being part of this, but this is very strong, obviously a very strong iwi area where they don't want weddings, they don't want tables, chairs, food, anything consumed on there. So is this, I'm just quite sure where this fits in. Is this iwi or is this not iwi?
So there's two different, when we talk about iwi land not being included in here, we're talking about those reserves that are subject to the treaty settlement.
Right.
Okay, this one's not, but the one at Portery is. And so therefore the reserve management plan remains as it is at this stage, because after treaty settlement, of course, we'll have to come up with a new reserve management plan. Where there's strong interest, like we have Titi Toki, for example, and the Otahu, we do cover those interests in the reserve management plan.
So they've stated no food to be consumed on there.
Yes.
How will you manage that?
So in terms of the reserve management plan, I mean, enforcing that is...
It's an operational thing, so we wouldn't, all we're doing in the reserve management plan is highlighting that this is what's important about this reserve. The day-to-day management of that would be done through our normal,
What, signage or policing or what? You don't know.
We have talked about signage. We're also, we are consulting with Ngāti Pū as well. We've talked about putting interpretational signage down there, and I think we've mentioned that in that.
You talked about it.
Yeah.
So it raises an issue that there's no formal acknowledgement on the reserve. And the policies B and C of that reserve relates.
But it's just, I'm not trying to make it fuss of this, but you've got the public toilet was moved off their land to the left.
So you're talking about Otahu.
Otahu,
Yeah.
But there's no demarcation line to say, you're suddenly moving from this land, which is reserved, into this land, which is sensitive.
Yeah.
So it gets a little bit very confusing about people who walk around there eating their pies and drinking their food and not knowing this, because it's all in one.
That will come through with the management plan that Derek's working on with Teach Shore. That whole area is under.
No, it's not. It's only got a Eurocar area that's supposed to be fenced off.
Yeah.
And there's a sensitive area, and then there's an area where the toilets are, which is actually reserved.
And that demarcation will come through on that management plan that Derek's working on Teach Shore.
Yeah, so that's going to take some work.
Yeah, and they are working on that, but it's at the operational level. Yeah.
So I just needed to understand that relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'd like to move the report, seconded by Kay. No further discussion. Put that, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Good luck with the consultation.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your efforts, thank you. Very good. Right, we now move to item 6.1, the action schedule. You have the report in front of you, so any questions of staff?
I'm getting to it.
Page.
Yeah.
Make sure that's on one page. I thought it was companies on that.
So our spatial plan visit is now.
Yeah, so spatial plan, which is pretty exciting. Hope you all will, but to look at the town and where it should go for the next 20, 30 years. As I read the Natural Built and Environmental Act, it really pushes that spatial plans are required by urban and rural areas to make these things happen. So it's obviously a directive from government to support what we're trying to achieve here. We've got a little town and around plan for those who want to join us, and I'm sorry, Tamsin, that it didn't quite fit this time, but I hope you'll come. There'll be plenty of these going forward. It's just a look and see. Really.
So
Yeah,
isn't it?
more than 5 days notice is good.
Yeah. So that's, yeah, we've got Michael and Joe coming over to, I don't know whether Tamil's interested or not, but at least if he provides maybe a plan of the area, it would be great to have a chat about.
So it's 11:30 here?
11:30 here.
The only comment I'd make is for about 4 years, we've been talking about signs welcoming visitors to the TCDC area, and it just seems to have gone nowhere, and now we've got no budget, so it's very disappointing. I thought it was a major, but yeah. So we can't get that right in 4 years. It's, I struggle with some of the bigger items. Okay, any other comments, guys? If not, I'll ask someone to move the recommendation. I'll move it. I'll second it. All those in favour? Aye. Against, carried. And now we move on to members' reports. If anyone want to give a brief report, ask for it to be brief, this one on time, so start today.
I could not attend the Whangamata ratepayers meeting because I was involved with the elections, and I have to also put my apologies in for next Saturday because we have family commitments on that day, so I've got no other report other than that.
Okay. Tamsin.
Limited from me, it would be good to stop being asked about Joe's farm. Definitely had a few people ask me for information on that. I just want to ask or investigate, how do we get the accent put on Whangamata?
On the background on the A.
Because that's,
get the A on the.
that's how it's spelled, so it
Well,
should
is this
be,
on all communications or?
yeah, just across the whole district.
I think it's just one of these things that you've got to push. I'll make sure it's on there.
Yeah, but I mean that we probably need to formalise it, because at the moment we're spelling it incorrectly.
A lot of our Whangamata is mental, we should be doing that, we do it corporate at the moment, so
Yeah.
I think we, I'll just talk about in-house advisor,
Okay.
but I think we definitely should. Thank you.
Okay.
I missed a few meetings, but I'm pleased to say I'm able to get most of my team, this is particularly the council, but also I think I attended the last council meeting and I had a few personal matters I had to deal with. But the principle that we talked about this morning early with Joe's farm seemed to me that was a great resolution and solution. And I'm just now with numbers, I think it's something that the board should have been consulted on because I'm just very worried about the oversaturation of population here and young people who really aren't going to respect the local district as those who own properties here and have families here. So anyhow, we'll see what happens.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit like Gary and Tamsin actually on over this Joe's farm thing. I've had so many phone calls. I'm glad Leases put this out because we haven't been communicated with, and I think it absolutely sucks because we're just going to be in the firing line if anything goes wrong.
I think we made the point we don't want surprise.
I know, but I know, but I mean, it's not fair. And Mr. Chairman, you should have known about it anyway.
Well, I only know what I know and I didn't know, so.
See, I'm not did any of this. Yeah, so there's a swimming pool meeting tomorrow, Thursday night, so we'll find out hopefully.
It's been put off because someone's sick. I just saw the email come through.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So I can go in the swimming pool. I was looking forward to the update because it's been very warm.
It's just someone's.
If anyone wants to go for a swim, it's 25 to 27 every day.
Gosh, that's considerably warmer than you see, I thought.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, in the library then too. I think that can be.
Yeah, Joe's farm is difficult. I understand council's issues here because it's a private operation and it's a private application and they've got to hear it and they've got to follow process, but keeping us in the groove is always important too, to help us answer some of the very regular questions that get asked on the street, but we'll see what happens on Thursday. I just want to raise some issues around, obviously, the number of people coming to the town, the water, which is a concern, obviously, how we promote the harvesting of water as much as we can, but also the fire risk. It's quite a big issue now that we have to address in terms of protection of our environment, and there's going to be some skyrockets coming up soon. How we deal with them, I don't know. Onto the council things, there is a key message that comes out from councils that they're looking at ways to who should pay for what, how much they should pay. So they'll be looking at things like cemeteries, car parking in town, boat trailer parking, wharf fees, airfield landing fees, commercial operator of reserves, and rubbish and recycling. All very valid points for us to consider, and we need to have some good workshop feedback from the community board going back into council's long-term plan discussions. Rubbish and recycling just raises its heads all the time, and we get I get a lot of feedback personally on the phone from members, but just talking about the cost of rubbish or where's it going to go, and some of the discussions going in council is around the number of rubbish collections over some seasons. These are all sensitive stuff, so we're just talking about them. Increases the blue bag fee, which obviously reflects on the cost of putting garbage into landfill. The refuse transfer stations, reducing of those refuse transfer stations, compactors taking their place, all these things. In the next 4 years, traditionally, maybe pushing out blue bags for wheelie bins. So these are discussions that are happening at council level, and looking for input and whether we think these are the right direction we should be going. And it's all about trying to find ways to fund a capital program. So I'm just keeping you up to date with what's going on there. Yeah, I don't want to get too much into it. It's on the discussion. That's nice.
Thank you. Just a couple of things I'll mention. I've had inquiries from some potential visitors who want to come to the beach shop with their motorhomes, but all the designated areas, the school, Mayfair, the farm out of town are all completely chocker. So I think it's something we need to think about for events like beach shop. Do we make other sites available perhaps for self-contained motorhomes to be able to visit our town? So something we need to talk about some more. The other thing, someone mentioned fireworks. We've got obviously fireworks sales started yesterday. I'm sure no one will order them and let them off with a fire ban in place, but in case they do, I just wonder whether we could have some publicity or signs sort of saying, leave your fireworks in your boot and take them home with you, because we don't want them when we've got a dry town and potential fire. So is there anything planned in that?
We can look at Thames because it's fire events in New Zealand. We're responsible for working on a push over the weekend ahead of that.
Yeah.
In regards to signage, that would have to be through Thames, but we, as I say, through all of our channels have been sharing those messages. Something that we've been also talking about with all the local radio stations, and we've done newspaper ads about it too.
Okay. Because I know in Auckland City have a bylaw which only allows fireworks up to 10 o'clock at night, apart from New Year's Eve. And we don't have a bylaw. Is it something perhaps further down the track we can look to control them, because it is something for animals and young children and the like.
Absolutely.
Is there any way that we can actually just get the one day, the one night, without all this?
I think it's a legislation.
I know.
That's a government thing.
Well, I know that Auckland City, well, they did have a bylaw which didn't prohibit it, but it did limit it under the, might be under the noise control. Anyway, something that staff can have a look at, because every summer seems to be a dry summer, and the potential for fires, and we saw what happened with the trees and the power lines. Well, you know, people have been drinking and letting off fireworks in dry areas. Anything's potentially could be a disaster. So just leave it at that.
I understand in Australia, it's actually covered under the explosions. If anybody lets them off other than on Guy Fawkes night, then people could be charged.
Well, they don't have private sales in Australia.
Sorry?
They don't sell fireworks privately.
Do they? Oh, okay. Yeah, well,
Private sale.
if they are let off, it's done under that. And you know, we spoke about this last year, but nothing's happened with it. But I really think it's something that we should look at and make
Well,
recommendations.
if we have some good, strong messaging anyway, might help a little.
So if Auckland City Council have got on here, you can light fireworks on private property from 5 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. every day during the year, up to 1 a.m. on 1st of January.
Every day.
That's what they've-
Well, you can't prevent them, but you can limit it to those, because they go off at 3 o'clock in the morning.
And they've actually got a whole lot of other stuff on here about the how boys and
It's rather ironic, isn't it? At the moment, we chuck people in jail for bombing things, and yet here we are celebrating someone bombing buildings.
Well, they failed.
Trying to bomb a building.
Okay, so
Interrupt, oh, sorry, were you finished?
I'll finish my
Oh,
report.
I just wanted to go back to Terry's report. Do we know why the coastal bins are cheaper than blue bags?
So through the chair, that's just a commercial decision that they've made, yeah.
Right,
So obviously, our blue bags, as you guys are well aware, it's not obviously the cost of the blue bags, it's the cost of the curbside collection
yeah,
service.
yeah.
And the transport and the disposal of landfill. So.
So they lost their then or something?
Possibly, I don't know, but obviously we do a lot of collection every week of the year, you know, going to lots of areas, you know,
Yeah.
quite widespread, whereas I suppose from their side, the commission operating more targeted where they're collecting, I'm sure it's only to urban areas or leave, I don't know.
Right.
So that could be why, yeah.
Okay, someone like to move those members' reports? Moved by Terry, seconded by Dave. In favour? Aye. Against, carried. Okay, now we come to item 6.3 to exclude the public. Moved by Terry, seconded by Kay. All those in favour? Carried. So now it's the public to leave the meeting. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
See you, Grant.
Wait for the recording to stop.